Hello, everybody. You're about to listen to my interview with Nik Skarbye, COO and partner of Scratcher. Scratcher is a gamification platform specifically designed for e-commerce, and it is a low-code, no-code platform for easy implementation by e-commerce merchants. Enjoy. This is the E-commerce Edge podcast with your host, Jason Greenwood. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm going to have a fantastic conversation today with Nik Skarbye, and he is the CEO and partner of Scratcher. Welcome, Nik.
Thank you so much, Jason. I really appreciate to be a part of your podcast. Very exciting.
My absolute pleasure. And look, we were talking about off air that I was a little bit late to our call today because I'm in LA picking up my dog to take him back to Mexico with me, and we changed time zones, and so I got my timing wrong. So I appreciate you being patient with me today.
No worries. I think a little bit of more patience in the world. That we could all use that.
It's a beautiful thing, isn't it? No, I really appreciate it. And it is great to be speaking with you today. Now, the cool thing, I guess, about you is that you have this, you're an advisory board member for several different companies, for several different retail companies. You've got this background with media sales, and you've been a partner of other technology platform providers. How did you've been doing Scratcher for just over a year now, so it's a relatively young company, but based on your background, how did you come up, before we get into the tech and what it does and the amazing stuff it does for marketing, how did you even get into this game in the first place?
Yeah, it's actually, it can be answered in a long run or very briefly, but I think if I go back several years to my teenagers and young, I used to do martial arts, but the curiosity within martial arts was basically to always try to challenge the new and try to challenge it and incorporate new ways of thinking, and not just use one method that was in place, but try to take different elements from different schools and mix it in together. So that actually ended up with me being 18, 20, 22 years old many years ago, and I was invited to teach in a very traditionalist setting where usually you would see older men who've been practicing for 40, 50 years. They would be the one teaching the seminars. So from a young age, I had this very entrepreneurial mindset. So basically jumping back to that journey, I found out what was really good was just talking to people with a big sense of curiosity. And then, of course, creating business and watching stuff grow.
Yeah, and look, I think you've taken a unique route with your technology as well. Now, as with a lot of technologies and platforms and people that I've had on my podcast before, I haven't used Scratcher before, but I think what you've done with Scratcher is something that we're seeing happen more and more across the marketing spectrum, which is to bring the concept of gamification to MarTech. And we even see it with things like, I guess, quiz commerce, where a lot of brands will want to know more and understand more about the preferences of their customers so that they can provide a more personalized customer experience, particularly as it relates to product attributes and specific products that will work better for certain customers than others. And in the process, they are also gathering more zero and first party data so that they can both improve their products, improve the personalization of their products, plus it allows them to retarget and remarket in much smarter, much more granular ways. And so how did the concept of gamification come onto your radar?
Yeah, so you're spot on with using those points. Unfortunately, I would say that it's not most companies that is mature enough to use it in that way, which is also fine. Some just want to catch the attention and basically break through that. So I think it's come back from my PR and the PR comm background, and also from the influencer marketing background, where you actually were able, as influencers on social media and Instagram, you were able to then create engagement with the users. And there was a big chat 5-7 years ago in the marketing industry about needing to break through the noise and content pollution, which is happening because the barrier of creating content and publishing your news and your content is constantly being lowered, especially now with ChatGPT. It means we're getting flooded with content. So being able to have content that enables you to engage or interact with your end users, customers, peers, whoever you want to engage with, that is a 3.0 that's happening right now. It is that you need to create a platform or a place or a community where you are able to engage with people. And gamification is basically just that. It is the ability to incorporate a technical element that allows you to make interactive content that on different levels, depending on where you are with your company, can engage and enable conversation without having a person. Yeah, triggering that kind of stimuli from the brainstem, curiosity, so to speak. Does it make sense?
It makes sense. And I think one of the other things that you guys seem to do, and again, not having used your platform, you can tell me whether I'm right or wrong on my interpretation of this, that you guys take gamification one step further and you say, okay, we want to create this engaging content where people maybe can win a prize or they have to uncover something along their journey to get something. But the other piece of this, you have to close the loop a little bit there, which is that if you gamify something and somebody wins the game, then they have to get something for that win. And
sometimes
I'm
actually,
sorry?
sometimes once in a while. So that's you're correct. And most times you actually want to have a prize because that can attract people. But having a prize in itself is just, let's say, 50% of the gamification part. Because what is also a different interactive element would be many of the social media quizzes. There's so much stupid content on Facebook, as an example, Meta, where you can say, if you're born 29th May, which I am, then because you're born 29th and in May, then your name according to this calendar is this, and people are happy to post a funny name. You would be this rock band if you mention what the last color of clothes you wore. So basically that's feeding into the engagement algorithm of Facebook by creating some kind of engagement by satisfying your curiosity. So having quiz-like element or personality tests in a corporate or less corporate format can also pique users or peers or customers' interest without actually having to offer a prize.
But I guess also if you do offer a prize or you offer the occasional prize, then you have to have a way to manage that. And you guys can, at least as far as I can tell, you can manage that within your platform.
Yeah.
And then I'm guessing you also integrate with some other third-party platforms, say, for example, other loyalty platforms, etc., in case that let's say a brand already has a loyalty program or they already have a membership program. So you want quote unquote the prize that would normally be issued through your platform to be registered in that other platform so that there's a seamless experience and that things don't need to be managed completely independently of existing systems.
Yeah, correct. It's a 360 platform that enables you to integrate with CDPs, ESPs, CRM, multiple platforms you're working with, and optimize and segment all the data sets and indicators. So what you say can collect zero-party first-party data, can enable cookie tracking and pixel tracking as long as it's still allowed, depending on what region you're in the world. But there's a lot of intelligent stuff you can do with this to just hyper speed your personalization offering and data collection.
And you guys also have an email engine built right into your platform, but do you also integrate with platforms like Klaviyo, for example, in case you want to actually do harmonized campaigns through an existing system?
Yeah, so you could say we are a hybrid SaaS company. So one thing is we have the platform, but we also do custom requests. So if you have something very particular, let's say a particular Salesforce setup with multiple different channels and companies within that enterprise setup, we just make a customized integration for that as a consultancy firm and match that in your SaaS platform. So it's a glove fit, basically. So yeah, we have integrations with all platforms. We have the small email platform, but that's basically for the small SMB segments that just want to test and try this out and have a nice email flow to it. But of course, we recommend you implement this in your marketing automation flows, newsletter systems, etc.
Yeah, in fact, I see on your website that you've already got out-of-the-box integrations with Drip, Hello Retail. Funnily enough, I just recorded a podcast with Hello Retail. It hasn't dropped yet, so very interesting to see that you, I guess, already integrate with them. You already integrate with Klaviyo, MailChimp, Salesforce. So you already have out-of-the-box integrations with a lot of the, I guess, what we would consider a very default MarTech stack. I even see that you integrate with
major players in the world.
Map and eMarcies and some of the major CDPs out there as well. And how do you guys see yourself within the context of what I would more broadly call that quiz commerce model? And how do you see yourselves? Would you see a company like Jebbit as a competitor to yours, or would you see them as very different to what you guys do and the way that you deliver your interactive content?
There's a lot of, so I would say as a starter, the gamification space is fairly blue ocean. There's not a lot of different competitors in the market we've seen because everyone is pushing that interactive content is a nice way, but there's not a lot of companies that have adopted it yet. So whether you use a solution, whether Outgrow, Jebbit, or Scratcher, or something else, in general, it's you're doing something in the right direction. I don't know Jebbit, which you just mentioned. I haven't heard about them before. We have 10 to 15 companies mapped as a competitor stack in primarily Europe, a few in North America. But I think that if you're looking to find a good gamification provider, first of all, you have to find out what it is you need as an organization and how complicated and internal tech stack you need to integrate through. That integration and the data flow you have to map. You need to make sure that the person or company you're speaking to, they understand and can map that for you. Then the second part is to build. You need to find out with any SaaS tool that it's an intelligent tool that you can use, and it's easy to use, because we all know we're getting more and more tools every day. So if you need to learn a new tool and it's not intuitive where to click, it can be troublesome to add it, and you will just fall back into the trap of doing what you've always done. And third of all, I think it's really important that you can also implement it without involving IT, because we all know for larger enterprise companies, you'll just end up in a ticket hell, and 9 to 12 months later, nothing has happened with your project. And we basically, marketers, if you want to make stuff happen, you want to make it happen next week. You want to be able to act on that great idea you got out from your marketing meeting. So I think that's some of the areas that's really important if you want to try out gamification marketing.
And you give examples of 6 major types of gamification that your platform offers. I'm sure there are more, but you give an example of like Wheel of Fortune, a Christmas calendar, which I'm guessing can be any kind of event calendar. It can be used as any kind of an event countdown type calendar, mystery box, quiz, drop, Scratchcard. And just talk me through a couple of those in terms of what type of use cases you are seeing your customers use those in and see success with.
So jumping back to your question, some of the hard-hitting points I also think about is not focus on the game itself, but focus on what you want to achieve. So take a retail store or a manufacturer of goods. Let's say we have a crisp producer who is creating crisps, but they're distributing them through their normal retail stores where you're buying them in Walmart or other stores, right? So basically, you as a person, you or me, we go down, we buy the crisps, we buy them physical stores, gas stations, whatever, buy the crisp, go home, eat them. The company who produced the crisp, they know nothing. They just get revenue from the retailers. Said company want to have a bit more of their cake, and they realize that they actually can move some of the business back online. So they can actually sell and distribute their crisps online and develop their business themselves. But they have no information, and it's going to be really expensive to actually start to capture the lead and build it up. So what they've done together with us is they have enabled QR code stickers with prices on each of their crisps and make competitions on that. So when you face the crisp bag and the offering, it has a messaging in the brand tone of voice where it says, win this, participate in, scan this to participate. And the more crisp bags you buy, the more lots or tickets you get in order to participate in this draw that will eventually be. It was a nice travel trip somewhere, right? So they managed to really create a really strong grip on who are big crisp eaters and crisp fans, capture them in their email marketing setup flow, and convert them to their online digital webshop, where they can start now to communicate directly to the consumers. So that's what I would call creating like omni-channel activation and capturing offline to online and converting that offline to online traffic. And there's a lot of businesses that struggle with this, where for instance, you would have manufacturing kitchen companies, building companies, where you would have a lot of people who are basically just curious and go into the shops and looks into the physical outlet that still exists. But when the salespersons arrive, they basically just say, I'm just looking around, no need to capture anything. But if they actually had some kind of quiz or game or something that said, what kitchen would be a good fit for you? Oh, and let me take this test to find out what kitchen I should actually look for. Or how much do you know about the kitchen types and styles? Or how much do you know about teak tree or different wood kinds? Or would you use handles or non-handles? And that's a way to capture that offline and convert that to your digital assets. And then you can, of course, use the digital stamps to a lot of interesting things when it comes to marketing. So that's a very cool case of offline to online.
And I think also you refer to, this is very much in the vein of direct to consumer, right? So we have a lot of manufacturing brands who have historically only been wholesale brands. They've only sold through other resellers or retailers. And so, as you say, they haven't really been able to close the loop in terms of understanding their customers because they have no relationship outside of the reseller channel. They have zero direct relationship with the end consumer. And so this allows them to slowly start to build a relationship with that end consumer. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that those customers aren't going to continue to, for example, in the case of crisp, it doesn't mean that they're not going to continue to go to the supermarket and buy their crisp along with everything else that they buy. It doesn't mean that they're going to start going direct to consumer with all of the brands that they buy from. They're going to buy through retail aggregators that still bring a lot of value to that shopping experience. But what it does mean, I think, is that even if that customer doesn't continue to buy direct to consumer through that manufacturing brand, it still allows that brand to understand their consumers much, much better than they would with zero market intelligence or relying 100% on the channel to provide them market intelligence. And that might be in the case of, for example, a new flavor, or it might be, in other words, to be able to get feedback on that new flavor and what a customer really thinks about it, as opposed to just looking at the top line sales numbers of that new flavor to know whether they should continue to produce it or change it or tweak it or whatever. They would rely on anecdotal feedback from their retail partners, whereas this creates a much more direct closed loop channel feedback, direct with their customers in ways that they just can't get any other way.
You're spot on. And I would actually believe that you've seen the case before, because that was exactly the case. So the first example I mentioned, that was a campaign or a case that they launched 1 year ago. But just now they launched 3 different taste options that they're running another game with, where you can actually taste and vote. And they are activating this on different social channels and getting TikTok creators to actually go out and talk about this and calling it the chips battle. So suddenly a lot of people are now buying all 3 bags to taste it, and then they go in on the chips battle and vote which creator has created the best chips bag. And that's probably the crisp bag that's going to be widely distributed and manufactured. So they are suddenly they are regaining some of the power that they have lost to the retailers. And I think that it's something that all brands who own products should learn when we have big companies that are sitting on market shares. Let's take Amazon as an example, right? So when you are smaller companies in Denmark, where I'm from, there's been a lot of conversation on small e-commerce businesses getting out of business if Amazon drops in Denmark, because they don't have the punch or the power to actually start to own up to their data. But if you apply gamification strategies like this, you will bypass some of the effects of not having cookies, people having ad blockers, because they want to participate in games. If you have a normal pop-up on your website that says get 10% discount for your first purchase, you have maybe a 2% conversion rate, and that person would already have bought your product probably anyway. But if you have as a Wheel of Fortune where you has a nice first price, but everyone basically wins 20% if they buy within the first 7 days, that converts 10 to 12% of the traffic that lands on your webpage. So collecting leads is no longer an issue. It's more the audacity or the boldness of daring to try to implement this. That is the main challenge. Because you can do a soft conversion. You don't even have to have the hard conversion of give me your information like email, name, phone number, whatever. You can just do a soft conversion, say allow cookies. And then with the cookie, when you accept the cookie from this, you have the pixels. With the pixels, you can do all your marketing stuff, retargeting and so on. So you can do different levels of targeting. If you come from an email, click through the link, or you're logged in a system and you're integrated Scratch with a CDP, we can recognize who you are. And your choices in different product test quizzes or guides will be locked to your profiling or server profiling in that CDP or CM system. So there's so many things you can do when you create engaging content that is not just sales driven. You're capturing what I call pre-sales content or pre-sales funnel.
And are you guys doing anything like almost like a lottery type of system? For example, let's say you're a Nike and you're going to do a new drop at a specific store. And again, this crosses that boundary between online and offline experience really well. But let's say you're going to do a new drop. You've got 100 pairs of shoes and you want people on the website to effectively go into a lottery for a ticket of where they will get in the queue to receive these products or have the opportunities to buy these products. And are you seeing that quite a lot in cases of limited availability of products or creating almost like an artificial scarcity concept through your games?
I haven't seen it a lot, but it's a great idea and activation example that you're coming with, because you have basically 2 ways of doing that. You can use if you have a receipt, a purchase receipt, and say that everyone who has purchased in the last year, use the order number that you have. Then basically the customer uploads those order number in the system, not to be too technical, and then you can make a draw based on that. So that the people, they can enter their order number from the past. They have to find the old receipt and then they can enter the draw. But what you could also do that could be really cool if the brand has the audacity to do it, is to just distribute random lottery numbers, or that people that come to the website can claim the lottery number. But then the reveal will happen on a point of sale location on a big screen with a countdown to create a footfall effect. And maybe that there'll be some kind of discount on the day as well, or first 50 shoppers will receive a special item or something like that. But the big prize, you have to bring your lottery ticket or your ticket and will be revealed on the screen. That's very easy to do. It's a lot of it. I always say the tech is one thing. The tech needs to be good, and you need to be able to use it and adapt it. But you also need to have a bold, creative marketeer who knows what they're doing and knows what they want to achieve. Then we can create magic together.
I think that is probably the word that stands out to me more than anything else of everything you said, is the concept of creativity, and the fact that, as you say, the tech nowadays, we can make it do almost anything you want, but the marketer has to be creative enough around their brand and bold enough, and I guess willing to take some risks in some respect and say, we don't know whether this is going to work, but let's try it and let's see, because the marginal cost to us is next to nothing once we've implemented the tech and we've got it up and running, and we'll talk about that in a second. But really, once that's done, once that piece is done, and once we've got it connected up to the rest of our systems, so our point of sale systems, our ERPs, our loyalty programs, etc., once we've got those things all interconnected and working well, now really all it comes down to is how creative can we get with how we integrate this into the points of engagement with our customers, or the points of engagement where we would like to increase engagement with our customers. And nowadays, especially for omnichannel brands that have a physical presence, including online, they will have, if they've got the right tech stack in place, for example, like a CDP, then they will know, for example, okay, this specific retail store in a region converts better than this retail store on average, based on the footfall coming through the door versus the conversion rate, right? But they will also know down to the customer level, okay, this customer shops at these 3 stores, plus they shop online with us. And of those 4 channels that they shop with us through, we know that at this store, they tend to convert better, they tend to convert higher, they tend to spend more, their AOV is higher. So therefore, we're going to try to bump or incent them to shop at that store more. Now, we're also probably going to need to dig a little bit deeper and find out why that store has a higher AOV for that customer, i.e., are the salespeople working in that store just doing a better job? They're more engaging, they're better at upselling or cross-selling, whatever it might be. So there's a whole lot of data, I think, that brands have access to today that they are not leveraging as pan organization as they could. But ultimately, if I had to distill that down into one word, it would be creativity. How can we more creatively engage with our customers in a way that gets better cut through, because maybe the customer's never seen that before, or at least they've never seen it before from that brand. And so how can we start to bring the concept of surprise and delight into every interaction? And I think a lot of brands are just going through the motions. We see their store experience is exactly the same. We see it's pretty boring. The people behind the point of sale counter feel, it seems like they don't even really want to be there. So I think it's partly about how can we engage our teams and our staff as well? How can we make it more interesting for our teams and our staff to be part of that customer journey, as opposed to them just being an order taker at a counter? And I think that's something that retailers don't think about either, is that this type of gamification process can make it more exciting for their own staff, not just for the customers.
It's very well put, Jason. And actually, I just want to jump back to another different example, because one thing was taking traffic from physical and converting it digitally, it. But the other way, that when you're also mentioning, now you're mentioning a brand with retail, that they have 3 different stores. What about if there was a competitor in the market stealing the customers? So sometimes brands that have committed themselves to physical locations as well, they have, after COVID especially, they have poor footfall in the shops, but they're tied into long leases, and it's very expensive for them to have their shops open. Maybe they even have a very negative turnover in those shops. But so they would actually love if they were able to push some of the online shoppers physically, not only to create some more turnover in those local businesses, but also because maybe the AOV is higher when they do see the stores, feel the products. So if it's okay, Jason, if I just come with a great example of how you can actually steal your competitors' footfall through gamification as well.
Can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, just so one really great example is that, surprisingly enough, if brands offer big prizes, like a trip to, if you could win a trip to Japan, you might assume that there will be so many people participating in this, so I don't want to participate because I'm never going to win. So you have that bit pessimistic approach. But on the other hand, if you could win a 6-pack of, let's say, Prime energy drinks, Logan Paul's energy drinks, right? But it's not unlimited. It's not just one prize. It's like, we have maybe 1,000 of these that we're giving out. Then you're like, oh, maybe there's a fairly decent chance that I'm actually going to win it. And fair enough, a lot of people is actually going to win this product. The catch is, you have to pick it up, and you can decide what days you can pick it up. So if you know that you are losing out on traffic on, let's say, Friday and Saturdays for grocery shoppings, That's like here in the Nordics, that's where you do your grocery shoppings, Friday or Saturdays usually. So what this brand did was that they actually took poor performing retail stores for food, and they had beers, they have Coke bottles, and they had crisps, and they gave that shit away. Sorry for cursing. I'm not sure that's okay, but
I encourage it on my podcast.
Perfect. They just gave that shit away to everyone basically. And the ticket price for that is the marginal cost of giving that away is next to nothing. So let's say it's €0.50, $1 or $1 for that. It's very little. But they managed to blast the index numbers because they were pulling away people who were usually shopping at one brand, but because the mom or the dad want a 6-pack and they had to pick it up in that shop, they moved their entire grocery shopping to the other brand because they had to pick this up. And I think that is just, again, it's a creative approach that is so easy to do. And the monetary benefits of that is huge. And if you could give them, again, thanks for shopping with us, next time here's 20% voucher, you will come again. So you can slowly change the habit, and they will find that your brand is cooler, more interesting, and whatever, because you have now given them a different experience than usually. You've given them a little bit of something. And that's just another great example of using this. Yeah, I thought that was relevant based on the conversation we just had. Moving traffic not just from shop to shop, from competitors to your shop.
Love that concept of almost stealing your competitors' thunder by getting them into local stores that are adjacent to or in the same area as your key competitors. But what it strikes me here is, if I was to, again, boil down that key concept, we think of it as breaking patterns, right? So
Correct.
All customers have patterns, they have routines, they have needs, they have wants, they have things that they shop at the store because that's immediately in their vicinity after a school drop off, after they drop their kids off at school in the morning, or just before they go to pick up their kids at school at the end of the day. So we all fall into patterns based on certain both phases in our lives and based on everything that's happening in our local region and community, right? And so I think that it feels like a whole lot of what you guys focus on is how can we break through the typical patterns that our customers fall into, and how can we interrupt those patterns? How can we grab a little bit of attention, even if it's only for a split second, and then in that split second of additional attention that we wouldn't normally have, how can we exploit that? And I know it sounds like a nasty word, but I mean it in a positive way. How can we exploit that very short-term pattern interrupt to get them to consider us in ways that they may not have ever considered us before?
100% is what I said in the beginning. It's breaking through the noise. It's breaking through the habits, the content pollution that's out there. You listed it much better than I could have put it.
No, I love that. I really like the concept that, hey, we have to do something here from an engagement perspective that is out of the ordinary, something that they don't see every single day. And how can we creatively apply that through our own brand lens so it's consistent with what they would expect from our brand? But also, how does it do it in such a way that they go, well, that's interesting, that's fun, that's exciting, that's different, and how can we pique their curiosity? So I think it's the concept of combining creativity with curiosity, right? How can we be creative enough to create curiosity on behalf of our customer so that they actually want to engage with our brand, despite whether they're actually buying something or not? And I think that's also really mission critical here, is the fact that almost everything that you've described so far doesn't necessarily require a purchase. In fact, in most instances, I would argue it doesn't require a purchase. And so that really lowers the barrier to entry for getting those customers to engage with your brand if there's no purchase required. And so to me, that feels, as opposed to, say, a loyalty program, or as opposed to, say, a membership program, or all of these competing ways to get attention with your customer and to create stickiness, the ways in which you're talking about now, because they don't require a financial commitment by the customer in most cases, that therefore, by definition, is going to dramatically increase the engagement rate.
Exactly. And that's why there is so many different approaches depending on what business that you're running. Another take could be that when we're talking about sales or non-sales, would be that a lot of e-commerce brands, if they just do fire sales and do 20%, 30%, 40%, and they do that frequently, I'm sure you know the brands that does that, then would you shop there when they have normal prices? No, you wouldn't. You wait until they have their next fire sale. And that's a habit that all of the customers end up doing. And it's like snowballing in a negative way. And the brand are like, why are nobody buying? And we have to do these sales in order to keep up with the business. And then it snowballs in a negative direction. But what we actually see is that if you create gamifications where you can win a certain percentage discount, and you can just set the gamification so you always win a discount, or in the discount when this Black Friday is open or whatever, is we don't do Black Friday, we do this, you have a chance to win the Black Friday offering. Then you don't do the 50% sidewise, but everyone who participates will get the 50% discount. And then you wouldn't devaluate your brand, because the winners, they don't know everyone is winning. They just felt, and maybe you even put an urgency call and say you have to use this within X. They are much more inclined to actually utilize the 50% than just, okay, 50%, this looks good. Maybe I'm going to use, maybe I'm not. Because now I felt unique. I want 50%. Wow, I have to spend it. My wife, she falls for this all the time. That's not good. But she's always getting upsold when she feels she has a really good offer.
Yeah, I use the term with my wife. I say we can easily go broke saving money.
Exactly. Yeah, that's well put. That's well put.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Listen, and now in terms of just the pure technical implementation side, just for a second, and I don't want to go into this too deep, but I'm guessing it's a JavaScript snippet or something like that gets inserted on the site, and then from there, within your control panel, then you can define the URL that you want a specific experience to sit on. You can define the layout through, I'm guessing, some sort of drag and drop editor. So explain to me from a technical perspective, how easy, how hard, what are the steps to get Scratcher implemented on a given e-commerce site?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. And you have experience in this, no doubt, because you basically just described how it's an iframe embed code that you can enter, and you can frame the frame. That's a funny way to put it. You can frame the frame how you want it, right? So you can divide the pixel size by width, height. You can blend it in seamlessly onto your website. So no limitation on your CMS provider there. Yeah, so that's basically, we have customers who sign a contract with us on a Friday at 3 or 4, and they're running their first campaign live Monday. And we are in the Nordics, we don't work weekends. So it's really easy and fast to integrate it. That I would call, that's a level 1 integration, because that's just the side integration. Then the next integration would be with your ESP, and that's just an API key if you want to integrate with, for instance, Klaviyo or MailChimp or some of the other nodes. Then if we go a bit deeper, we have native integration, like what you mentioned previously with Salesforce. That's a fairly straightforward as well. But the more complex the integrations comes with customized CDP setups and pathways and so on, it will take maybe a week or 2. But we're never talking anywhere between 3, 6, 9 months. We are an easy plug and play tool, but with what I mentioned previously, with a little bit of consultancy to juice it up.
Yeah, it makes sense. And now for you guys, beyond the technical implementation, you are a SaaS platform. And so I see that what your pricing model is a very kind of a standard SaaS model. You've got the 14-day free trial, which means people can try it out for absolutely free and no risk to them. You've got your starter plan, which I'm guessing is perhaps your most popular plan. It's 299 euros a month. That includes the subscription, includes integration, onboarding, and training. And then if you need some of those more complex integrations that you referred to, ESP, CDP, CRMs, etc., then you've got your pro plan, which includes all of that. And that is, I'm guessing, a negotiated price, because it says let's talk, and then single campaign. You can also run single campaign. So you've got that fairly standard model. And is there is in addition to that sort of fixed fee per month, is there a per engagement, per use fee, or is it simply that fixed fee per month, no matter how many engagements you get? So whether it's 1 million engagements, 2 million engagements.
So basically we scale based on the engagement participants. So that's where we usually say the starter contains a certain amount, a set amount of engagement or participants, depending on the complexity of the company and the setup. So it has to do with these that we have to deliver and the amount of markets that the campaigns have to be created and translated to. So there is in these frameworks, and that's why we are constantly working on our pricing setup to reevaluate what is the best go-to-market strategy. Yeah, with these different packages that you see online, you have a set limit of participants that comes with it, usually around 10,000 participants for the starter solution for the first year. But again, it depends on what kind of business are you. Are you a B2B company? 10,000 is ridiculously high. Are you a retail store? You can't get anything done for 10,000. So that's why usually when we are talking to not this plug and play, where it's a bit different company, we usually have a conversation, try to find a match in terms of budget size, scalability, experience. What do you want? Can you handle it yourself? Do you need consultancy? Do you need workshop, et cetera, et cetera? And then we find a set solution for that. I'll say our average client is about €1,000.
That, to me, that feels very reasonable compared to if we were just thinking about, say, for example, a Google Ads campaign or a Meta campaign or even a physical activation that required, I don't know, a brand to hire somebody famous or an influencer or whatever. You don't get a lot for $1,000 a month, do you?
The caveat is, though, that The Scratcher platform, or gamification for that matter, is not a traffic driver. It's a conversion rate optimization element, right? So you still need that traffic, whether it's offline, online, if it's from an influencer or from activation, Meta, Facebook, wherever. But what we do see though is that when you create gamified elements, we increase the click-through rates up to 3 times as high. So you could do a spreadsheet and say, okay, if I save this on my ads, but can increase the conversion for this, it actually evens out, but I get more data. So there is definitely, for bigger budgets, there's definitely money to be made just on savings, basically, by implementing this, because you're optimizing your outreach and your ads with this. I've got questions. We have a lot of partner agencies as well, because they are the experts. I'm not an ad designer, graphical designer. We don't do Meta ads, as an example, for our customers. We just focus on one thing, and that's platform gamification tech. But some of our partners, when they use our platform and they look at this, they also by the customers by themselves. Why don't we just do a lead ad, right? They can do lead ads on LinkedIn, lead ads on Meta, Instagram, etc. Fill out my information, here you go, and you can win a prize. We will make a draw. But the thing is, the skepticism of the consumers is that they have filled out enough of these lead ads to know that they will receive a call the next day, and they never hear anything about who won the prize. But when you see something moving, if you see a lottery moving or a Scratchcard moving, or you see an interactive quiz where you actually get to see if you won in the end, that lowers that skepticism a lot. So it's also a lot about thinking and not just looking at the opportunities that exist in the market. Oh, I can just make a lead ad, that works fine. You have to look at the potential and say, okay, what is this psychological elements that is at work at marketing? So marketeers are usually part-time shrinks and part-time marketeers. They really have to understand what's going on in user behavior, user shopping styles, trends, and so on. So I think that's really important to put out there.
But I think also what they benefit from with, I guess, having a partner like Scratcher is that there's certain playbooks that you work because you've developed the software, you've developed the systems, you're also seeing what's working across the entire depth and breadth of your customer base. But also you have these playbooks that are almost plug and play, right? That, hey, we know that if we plug this type of experience in, we know this is the likely result based on all of these thousands and thousands of experiences that our customers have had and engaged with on our platform. And I think that's whilst there's absolutely creativity that needs to be there on the part of the brand, a boldness and a willingness to take these types of quote unquote risks, but I think also they are able to leverage in a somewhat plug and play fashion. They're able to leverage your experience in the market as well to, I guess, as an accelerator to get them to market faster with an experience that is likely to be highly engaging for their customer.
Exactly. And that's exciting. And that's one of the things I was excited about getting to have this conversation on the podcast is we do have these podcasts and webinars with partners where we leverage the combined strength of each. Because we don't end out with the end results because we are not a Meta partner. We don't run the ads. So we don't get the input when we don't get the sales numbers in the end, but our partners do. And we can come in with the combined strength of saying, here's a concept. So if your customer has the challenge of X, we've seen these concepts works really well before. A concept being you have to pick up a physical product that you can win a lot, a low price to move traffic from one location to another. That's just a concept. It has nothing to do with a platform. It has nothing to do with, but that's basically helping the customers to enable and lower that. If they don't have the ideas what should work, then we can come in and provide concepts for them and say, we've seen these cases here that could solve the problem that you might be. B2B companies, right? So B2B companies are constantly struggling with the fact that they need to digitalize themselves and move into the digital era. It's 2023. But they are often, and I really don't want to offend anyone, but in most cases of the companies that I've spoken to, like several hundreds, it's most often the truth. But it's really easy for them to stand out on a fair and attract, like an event, and attract attention if you have a not so interesting product where you're selling pipes or hoses. But if you actually create some engaging elements at the fair or at the event, that will allow your old key account managers or your key account managers to actually attract attention and engage in a conversation like an icebreaker. So then we're going back to the fact that do your staff actually need to be the best of the best salespeople to attract attention? Yeah, you might have one of those once in a while, but can you benefit from building a company that only has superstars? Probably not. So if you can use elements like this at fairs or events to attract attention and make an icebreaker for them to actually engage in a conversation about the engaging content or gamified content that was created, then suddenly you help your salespeople create good conversations while capturing the lead, and you can actually provide an ROI case and tracking for your marketing lead CEO or whoever you're reporting to and say, okay, This is the fare we had. This is the leads we collected. This is the amount of good conversations we had. We've identified these leads coming from X, Y, Z. And we, the salespeople, after looking to this, believe that they can create pipeline opportunities of this value. Here you go. Suddenly you can track ROI on FAS.
Wow. It's been a fascinating discussion, Nik. I really enjoyed it. I really like what you guys have done over at Scratch, and I like your frame of thinking, interrupting patterns, creating better customer experiences, making it fun, making it interesting. I always am looking for the next phase, the next major change to customer experience and customer journeys. And it feels like you guys are really at the cutting edge of that and trying to really think long and hard about what do we need to build to facilitate amazing customer experiences for not just marketers, but for end consumers out there. How can we make something that is just that little bit more interesting than a flat stat website that maybe has personalization that simply recommends products on a product tile, whilst at the same time collecting a whole lot of super valuable zero and first party data that brands just really cannot get any other way, especially in this age where privacy protections for consumers are really making it very difficult to grab data like we used to. And therefore, brands are stuck in a very unenviable position now. They're spending more and more money on acquisition, and it's more and more taking the form of spray and pray. That's never fun. That's never nice. And at least if you're going to go and you're going to have these massive budgets with Google and with Meta, then we might as well increase our likelihood that we're going to, if not convert the customer based on that ad or based on that bit of traffic, then at the very, very least, we can dramatically increase engagement with our brand, and therefore, hopefully, at least brand recall, name recognition, etc., even if they don't buy on the spot. So really love what you're doing there. So thank you very much for sharing with us today some of the concepts and some of the things you're seeing working really well in the market. I think everybody can benefit from your experience. Now, we're also coming to the end of our time together, and I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you, and I get to let you ask me one question, any question you like. Could be personal, could be professional. So I'd love to turn the microphone over to you, Nik, and what's your question for me today?
Great, Jason, and thanks for a really good talk. I was actually just considering that based on you say you're always looking for the cutting edge, or like the next big thing. So in your opinion, what do you think is happening out there now? And what do you think that will be sort of the fourth revolution or the next big thing for marketeers in e-commerce?
That's a very good question. And I think if you'd asked me this question 6 to 12 months ago, I would have said Web3. I would have said that Web3 is within 5 years. I would have said Web3 experiences were going to become very common. Obviously, with the implosion of FTX and everything else that's been happening in the Web3 space, I think that's been set back by probably a decade. I'm happy to be wrong in that regard, but we even see Meta pulling in its horns with its multi-billion-dollar a year metaverse investments. And so I think that Web3 hasn't been killed, but it has certainly been stalled and paused and delayed. And so I think that the current iteration of web experiences are going to be the norm for the next 5 to 10 years. But I think the brands that can do, even if they don't adopt something like Scratch, I think the brands that can be the most creative in the way that they speak with their customers, they create opportunities for engagement with their customers. I know this sounds very trite, and it's probably not as specific as even I would like to be, but I just still see so many, I would say in excess of 95% of retail experiences are just boring as shit when I walk in. And this is everywhere in the world. And I've traveled through Europe. Obviously, I've had huge involvement in ANZ and now back in North America. And just from a retail store perspective, malls are very homogeneous. The stores that are in them are very homogeneous. I don't see a lot of surprise and delight. I don't see a lot of happy staff in retail stores. And so therefore, if the staff aren't happy, how can the customers be happy? I still see, even here in Mexico, I still see people walking into stores. The retail staff are on their phones. They don't even realize the customers walk through the door. They don't even say hi. They're not even welcoming to them. Now, this isn't everybody. And I know this is a very broad brushstrokes. There are outliers out there, and there are some that are very engaging when you come in and not necessarily trying to be salesy, but just trying to be engaging and welcoming. But I still see too many very boring and static experiences in store. And I think that brands that can bring surprise and delight in store, and I don't know, maybe, for example, in your case, with your technology, if somebody had a giant touchscreen and they almost like a kiosk in store where they had one of your spin to wins or whatever it was right there in store, then even something as simple and stupid sounding as that is going to get a lot higher engagement than a very flat, non-moving, non-engageable store. And so I think brands that can infuse digital experiences inside and embed those inside the physical store experience in particular, I think those guys are the ones that are going to win. Because as you say, you can gather data in those in-store engagements, the in-store digital engagements, I should say. You can gather more data about that experience, far more than any kind of in-store retail tech is ever going to be able to do. And that's also very low friction engagement, because again, the customer that's coming into the physical store and engaging with a digital in-store experience, whether that's scanning a QR code in store to win something or to unlock an experience, whatever that might be, because that doesn't require a purchase, that is going to lower the friction to engagement. And I think that's what brands should be trying to do. They should be trying to lower the friction to engagement by not requiring a purchase to engage with that experience. And that to me feels like a big part of what the future holds for retail.
Love it. I love it. And I might even steal a second question, Jason, because we touched on creativity earlier and the lack of creativity or the lack of boldness or where it comes from, right? So a lot of what you're saying is probably also, in my regards, is also touching on the brands or the ones responsible for the brands. Are they daring enough and are they creative enough, or are they just in a copy-paste mode and touching into the next big thing in marketing? There's been a lot of AI and ChatGPT and so on. But do you believe that we could see these AIs become sort of an enhancer in creativity for marketeers? Let's say a marketeer is sitting there super busy. They don't have the ideas to create something like that. Could they go in and use and have a good conversation with someone who can sort of enable their creativity?
I think absolutely. I think what's going to become critical in that new environment is a prompt engineer, right? And we're already seeing that. We're already seeing that experienced designers are now expected to be prompt engineers for AI to get good responses from AI, because an AI's response is only going to be as good as the questions it gets asked, right? And so I think that the creativity will now be in the questions. And I think that's been true of marketing for forever. You ask better questions, you get better answers. But I think that's even more applicable and more mission critical in an AI mediated environment. Now, what I think will also happen in tandem and in parallel with exactly what you said, which is marketers finding inspiration via AI that they couldn't necessarily get in any other way, because AI is able to scan across its database of millions of experiences that it's absorbed and interpreted and contextualized over the millennia of the internet here, the millennia of knowledge that is stored within the internet. So I think, yes, there will be that. But I also think there will be a lot more AI infusion by default in all of the technologies that these marketers use anyway. So therefore, the prompt engineering will be most likely in the core platform that they deploy, i.e. your platform. They're going to be exposed to AI whether they like it or not, meaning that a platform like Scratcher is going to start incorporating AI, as we've seen if we look at what's happening in the chatbot space, if we look at what's happening in the help desk space now, and we look at Intercom, and I've mentioned this on a couple of other podcasts where Intercom has recently announced that they're integrating ChatGPT into their help desk platform so that when, for example, the knowledge base gets updated with a new piece of content and information, it immediately gets updated inside of the chat experience that the customer has. So it's always up to date, it's always current. And so therefore, instead of having an experienced designer that it's not the way that we do everything that we do across every single piece of technology that we deploy, because it's going to be baked in by default. So yes, is AI going to change the world of marketing? Absolutely, no question about it. Is it going to help inspire better marketing? I hope so. Is it going to inspire better copywriting? I hope so. Is it going to inspire better social content? I hope so, that it doesn't just become a giant copy-paste environment. Again, it comes down to how creative can someone be in their use of the technology, not so much how much can the technology help make someone more creative.
And maybe then we're just back to the fact that are the person responsible for actually doing the work creative enough, whether it's to be creative enough to use a prompt or creative enough to do it themselves. They still have to be able to either do an input or create creative campaigns, right? But really interesting conversation here, Jason. A really good point, and was a really good conversation.
I've really enjoyed it. Now, how would you prefer that people get a hold of you? Just for everybody who's listening, Scratcher, SCRATCHER, exactly like it sounds, .io is how they can find your website. Would you prefer that people just jump on your website, jump into the free trial, maybe ask for a demo through your live chat, or would you prefer that people get a hold of you through LinkedIn? Both? How do you prefer people get a hold of you?
If you thought I know what I talk about, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to have a conversation straight with you. If you prefer to talk with some of my colleagues, and then jump onto the website and have a chat.
Oh, mate, sounds fantastic. Thank you so much, Nik, for sharing your knowledge and your experience with me today. And again, I apologize for being a little bit late to the start of our call. I really appreciate your patience with me today. And I'd love to get you on another 12, 18 months and see what you've done with Scratcher. And maybe before you go, one last question, if I can sneak one last one in there. What is, over the next, say, 6 months, what is your top new feature that you would like to or plan to roll out in the next 6 months that either is high on your radar or that your customers are asking for?
So basically, I think that based on your brief, this podcast will be out in 2 months or so. And in 2 months, we are very close of relaunching our entire platform and the way that you think on how you create content. So we are trying to create a feature that allows marketeers or brand users to be much more creative in the way they go. So instead of them being approached to say, oh, do you want to make a wheel of fortune, or do you want to do this and that? We basically ask the question, what do you want to achieve? And then we present tried and tested concepts that they then can work with. So the creation experience will be completely different, and it's going to be a game changer. And that's
no
just
pun intended.
5% of it. Exactly, no pun intended. Yeah, touch woods. We all know how it goes with product launches, developments, MVPs, and so on. Touch woods. There's some exciting stuff to see.
Love it. I love the idea of starting with the goal and working backwards. It's very aligned with the Steve Jobsian approach of deciding what the customer experience needs to be and working backwards from there to the tech to support that. Congratulations, Nik. I love what you're doing here. I love your concept and your passion for the industry and your passion for creativity. So thank you for sharing your experience with me today. And I look forward to chatting with you again soon, mate.
Cheers. Likewise.
Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.